Hey guys, in this YouTube tutorial, you will learn how to create this logo animation right in After Effects. As usual, let's start with Adobe Illustrator where I have already created this logo. Here you can notice that the logo is already made in a single layer. So we have to layer it out into multiple layers. For that, we will select the complete logo, click on these three lines and then go to Release to Layers Sequence. And your layers are created. Select all the layers and then drag them to the upward part. And now you have separate layers for each and every shape. The next very important thing here is to rename all the layers. So let's do it. This way, we won't be getting confused in After Effects and can easily save lots of time. Let me speed up the process so you don't get bored out of it. Save this Illustrator file in your PC. Now that the layering part is completed, let's import this logo into After Effects and start the animation process. Double click on the project panel, select your Illustrator file and make sure you select composition retain layer sizes instead of the footage option here. Press import. And there you go, you have your logo file converted into a composition here. Let me also show you my composition settings. So it's a 1920 by 1080 composition. Let's change the duration to around 8 seconds and frame rate to 60 fps. But it totally depends upon you at whatever frame you want to animate. We can now notice that we have Illustrator layers here. So let's convert them into After Effects shape layer. For that, right click on these layers, go to create shapes from vector layer. And now you have all the shape layers. So let's delete the Illustrator layers as we don't really need it now. Let's lock the BG layer as we don't really need to use it right now. Next step is very crucial as now we will have to group these elements of the logo so that we can easily view them in the After Effects panel. For that, I will group them into three parts. The first one as logo icon composition, second one as the name composition and the third one as the slogan or the second name composition. Take the three arrow layers and parent them to the circle layer. Now before we start animating all these layers, let's take a camera here. Select the preset to 28mm camera, but you can also use a 35mm one depending upon your requirements. Press OK. Now convert these layers into 3D. Set the custom view 1 to active camera and there we go. For now we don't really have to use the camera, so let's lock it. Since we have already parented all these arrow layers to the circle, let's place a keyframe for the position of the circle. Because we want to start this animation to go from the logo part and then to the text part, and the logo has to be centered for that. Close the eyes for these layers. Go to the end and this will be our reference key for the position so that we don't lose it. Always remember this step, especially for beginners. The final position of the logo should only match the original logo and should not be custom one. So here's the precautionary keyframe that I always keep for the end part. Now let's go to the beginning, select the circle and align this to the third. But no, we can't really do that because it's a 3D layer. No problem, let's do it manually. Yeah, done. In the first keyframe, let's change the value so that our animation is starting from outside the screen. the keyframe slightly to the center. Yes, there we go. Place the end keyframe to around 50 frames. Press N. Yeah, now we can review the animation part and not the whole comp. Looks better. Select both the keys and press F9. Let's change the graph editor. So the speed is high at this point when the animation starts and gradually slows down. Better. But now let's change the end position to a slightly bigger circle because we really want to focus on the logo animation here. Better. Duplicate this circle. Now we have a background circle and the front one. Let's offset this. Go back to the secondary layer. Now for this duplicate layer, let's go to one of the keyframes, delete the position keys and link this one to the first circle, which is a primary one, so that it follows the same position. To create an offset here, let's get to the third frame and increase the size of the first circle. We can't really see the difference here because both the circles are in the same color. So let's change the circle color. Okay. Select both the keyframes. Again, press F9. But this time with Graph Editor, we will slow down the first part a little bit. Let's increase the circle size a little bit more here. Go to the Graph Editor again. Now this creates a certain kind of offset between both the circles. For the end part, let's keep it close to the original one because at the end we want it to collapse again. Let's do this again. Duplicate this secondary layer, drag it down to the bottom, press U, offset a few frames again, place the end part very close. Sorry. Yeah, let's change the color for this circle. Increase the circle scale a bit more here. Remember, a good part of any kind of animation is always observing how it exactly looks while you make any kind of change in it. This looks much smoother now. But for the first circle, let's decrease the ending speed so it smoothly enters the screen rather than just bumping around. A bit more. This looks good now. Now that our circle animation looks good, let's change the color for the BG as well. Take a new solid, rename it to white BG, press OK. Drag it down to the bottom. And there you go. Also, let's change the color of these circles to a much nicer logo color palette. Let's change the red to this orange color with a slightly less saturated version. And this purple color back to the original orange color version to create that difference. Need to reduce the saturation a bit more. How about this color? Yeah, this looks much better. There's a slight dark portion here at the end. For that, when the circle collapses inside the primary circle, let's delete the layer from that part or just trim it. Yeah, now there's no extra edge here. The circle's color looks much better now. Let's change the white color BG to a different color to get that contrasty look. Add fill to it and let's change the color to dark bluish tone. This looks better. Now let's animate the arrow part. Select all the 3 arrows. At 50th frame, or I'm in left bracket, to drag these layers to the start point here. Press P for position. Let's keyframe the position values here. Move all the arrows to different directions. Converging into center. Save this project. A great tip, guys, always save your projects. Do not work for hours without saving your project, otherwise you might lose it. There's a slight movement which is distracting me. For this, select the main circle layer, press Ctrl C on this last key and take it down to here. Nice. To make this animation more dynamic, let's create an offset here as well. Select the 3 arrows, press the position keyframe again, and now at this point, drag it more towards the center. Yeah. Solo out these 3 layers so we can mainly focus on their animation. And using B and N, let me trim it to the work area. Yeah. Select all the keys, press F9. At the secondary point where the animation suddenly stops, let's select these keyframes, left click, continuous, and press OK. Now slightly drag these keyframes to the upward part so it doesn't stop the animation at this point. It creates a nice keyframe. Looks nice, but we really have to increase the speed for this animation. Nice. Let's add more bounce to it. 10 frames forward, again keys, and now at this point, slightly create an offset. Remember, it has to be a very slight animation, so don't just go overboard with it. This creates much nice realistic elastic effect to it. Again, select these keyframes, left click continuous and slightly raise it upwards. Perfect. Create some amount of offset between these 3 layers as well. Let's add some rotation to the circle. I guess one rotation would be more than enough. Yeah. Also, let's add scaling to it because now we want to transition into our main logo. It expands further and then drops down with a boom. Or 70%. Slowly gets bigger, suddenly gets dropped to a slower size and then slow again. Select all the keyframes, again F9, getting back to the graph. Select both the keys, press OK. Slightly upward so the animation doesn't stop. I want to also add an additional animation to these three layers. But the situation is such that this is actually parented to the fourth layer. So if I do any extra animation to the position, it won't be possible since we already have 4 keyframes here. What I will do in this situation is go to directly at the end point of the animation, which is at this point. Break the link of these three layers from the main circle. Select a null object here. Let's rename it to arrow control. Change it to 3D. Parent it to the main circle layer and then parent these 3 arrow layers to this arrow control. So the animation remains untouched, and now we have a new parent for these 3 layers, which also is a child of the main circle layer. Press U to reveal the keyframes. Now here, let's add scaling to this animation as well to create another offset animation. Select these keyframes, and now we don't have to manually animate the graph for these as well. For this, I will select the keyframes for these layers. Go to ease copy script, copy these layers, and then go back to these 4 layers or these 4 keyframes and paste ease for it. So eventually the graph of these 4 keyframes is also copied and pasted to the graph for these keyframes. Let me show you. Here you can easily see that now both the keyframes have the same kind of graph. Slightly offset this. Let's take the 3 layers. It's much slower at this point. Yeah. Slightly decreasing the speed for these, so it looks much more powerful and impactful animation. Better. Let's trim the extra layer again, and also drag these animations slightly to the frontal part. The offset looks much bigger. Also, let's animate the scale for the circle shape transform as well. Go to contents, group, transform. We have a scale here too. Paste ease so that the graph is also get copied to this part. So increase the value for this one. I will also add the link for this. I will also add the link for this script right in the description of this video, so don't forget to check it out. At the point where the logo hits the center again, let's make it more dynamic here. For this, take a new adjustment layer and add invert to it. I like the hue here much more. Let's add key to the blend with original. Move 3-4 frames forward, back to 100. Move 3-4 frames forward again. Let's take it to 40%. 3-4 frames again, back to 0. Or 100 again. And then back to 0. Reduce the gap by dragging all the keys by using Alt and left mouse button. And let's change it to hold keyframes. Increase the gap slightly much more. Yeah, this looks better. Also, let's add twitch effect to it. This plugin is really good when we want to create some kind of glitch effect or a dynamic shaking effect to it. Let's enable color and blur effect, or slide effect would be much better. Decrease the amount to 40% and speed to 3. Let's increase the speed to 5 back again. In behavior, the behavior looks nice. Let's go to the slide option here in the operation controls and decrease the amount of slide. And let's see 20. Yeah, 20 looks better. Let's change the adjustment layer. We don't even have to keyframe this, as wherever the adjustment layer is that the part affected. We don't even need to keyframe this effect here, as we have used an adjustment layer. So once we have cut this adjustment layer at this point, the effect will also not work here. Increase the speed slightly further. Yeah. Now as we see some black parts here, which is actually the alpha part. To correct this, just go back to your background layer and scale it to more than 100%. Also for this white layer, and done. At this point where the screen shakes, let's go back to the circle position layer, and remember we have a reference point here, which is actually the final position for this circle. At this point where the camera shakes, or basically the whole scene shakes, let's change the position of this logo to the final part. Turn off the adjustment layer for now and go back to its final position. Drag this keyframe here, which is the copied one for this one, so the position doesn't change till now, and right at the next frame. Now let's make a peak comp for this logo animation part. Select all the layers for the circle and around the arrows. Ctrl Shift C. Logo animation. Press OK. Let's change the color for this composition so we can easily recognize it. Turn off the adjustment layer for now. Go to position and right at the next frame. Go back. Add a position keyframe, and after 20 frames, take it slightly upward. Go back inside this composition. Let's see the animation that we played here. Okay. Let's add keyframe to the scale part here as well and decrease its size so that it aligns with our original logo. Select both the keyframes, press F9. Let's increase the grab. Slightly more. Also turn on the 3D for this layer and collapse transformations as well, so that the outside camera can affect the inside layers again. Now that we have made a composition for the logo icon animation, let's turn on collapse transformation for this layer so that it can also get affected by the outside camera. Turn on the slogan and name layer. And now at this point, where the transition happens due to this glitch effect, let's add a position and a scale keyframe. I have added a 50 frames gaps approx and taken this icon upward. And let's reduce down the icon scale value. F9. Okay. Go to the graph editor. Slightly increasing the offset here, as I think there is something missing for this part. Yeah. Due to the camera, the lines are going out of the screen, so let's decrease it a little bit. Yeah, now it's better. Let's get back to the text animation part here. Go to the name composition in here. Let's start the animation by animating the X. For this, press Ctrl R and drag a guideline here. Also, go to the position, keyframes keyframe here, drag it to the center, solo it out. Let's go to the path animation. Let's select the inner keyframes first. We are adjusting the path in a way that it looks like a single line, which then expands to form X. This looks better. We will animate this line in a way so it looks like it is coming down from the center of the circle and then expanding to X. Slightly more animation here. Yeah. Now it's hidden behind the circle. Expands at the same time. And the circle goes down. So till here. Okay, at this point has to include this place. Be very careful when you are animating the paths. Better. Let's select these two keyframes, copy the graph, and add it to the position and path value. See how much time it actually reduces. See how much time you can actually save by using this script. Copy the second keyframes as I also want to expand this part while it's getting downwards. So here, keep the path animation here and then it goes downwards. So it looks like this line is expanding from inside the circle and then collapsing to form a straight line, which then converts into X. And now at this point, let's work with the position value. Instead of directly going to the right side, let's expand it to the left hand side first, because we eventually want all the letters to come out from this line. Now the line expands, goes to the left part, and then, while moving towards the right, starts expanding again to form the X. Let's create a new box shape. Rename this as mask. Place it to the edge of this X line and then link it to the X layer. Select the D layer and track matte to the mask layer. Repeat the same step for all the other layers. Now, the box has actually worked as an alpha mat for all the text layers. Also, at this point, when the logo animation starts forming to the final position, change the white color and cut it down. Now the BG has also changed to the black color. This gives a much more dynamic and realistic effect to the shakiness of the screen. And here's a short preview. Let's move to the slogan animation now. Place start and end keys at a 30 frames gap for all the layers in the position value. Take it upward in the first keyframe. Select all the keyframes. Press F9. Add easing to it. Shift T to open up the opacity keys. 0 opacity at the starting. Add ease to these keys as well. Now let's add 1 frame offset between all the layers. One more thing. At this point where this circle rotates along with the arrows, let's add an echo effect here. Go to effects and presets, search for echo. Let's add it here. Increase the number of copies. Change the echo time to minus 0.001 and change the echo operator to composite in back. Let's add keyframe to the number of copies because we don't really want it here at this part, but rather when it starts rotation. Add another keyframe here and at the start decrease it to 0. Increase it slightly to 30 copies. Better. Copy this effect to the other arrows as well. At this point, let's decrease the number back to 0 again. Remember, this is a very heavy effect, so keep sure you select the right number of frames every time and not get overboard with it again. You can also upscale the name animation by adding a little offset to the letters coming out of X. For this, all you have to do is select all the layers, go to this part where the X starts revealing them, select the position keys, go 20 frames later, and then move to the right side a little bit from the first keyframe. F9. Adjust the graphs. Increase the gap a little bit more. Yeah. And now let's add slight offset between these layers. I've added a 2 keyframes offset and see the difference. And there we go. Now we have finally completed this logo animation, so congratulations. With that being said, make sure you like this video and do leave a comment as well. See you in the next animation.